Good evening, everyone, and a warm welcome to our latest Ipsos webinar. I would like to thank all of our esteemed guests and some of our clients, some of them are new faces here who are joining us for our webinar session for today. It's been a while since we actually hosted a webinar session recently. So it's really good to see everyone being able to take the time to join us today for our session today. So today we will be hosting a webinar session titled The Synthetic Shift, Rethinking Data, Redefining Speed. So today we will be discussing the potential of synthetic data in market research and why Ipsos is best positioned to partner and to navigate this new reality. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our speakers for today. Before that, I would like to actually share a few housekeeping rules before I introduce our speakers. So firstly, I'd like to share that our session today is being recorded, so not to worry. For those of you who would like to have a look at the recording again, we will be sharing a link where you'll be able to access the recording for today. So just a quick reminder to also keep your microphones on mute and to ensure there's no interruption to the session today. And if you have any questions to our speakers, you may leave the questions in the chat box, and our speakers will very happily be able to take up the questions during the Q&A session later towards the end of the session today. Or if you have just any questions that you'd like to ask directly to our speakers, you may click the raise hand button, and you may just ask any of the questions that you may have directly to them at the end of the session today. Yes, so that's a very quick one for the housekeeping sessions. And now I'd just like to quickly introduce our esteemed speakers, our expert speakers here today at Ipsos. So our first speaker would be Ajay Bangya, who would be our global qualitative lead for Ipsos. The next speaker after Ajay would be Jane Latimore. So Jane is our group service line leader here in Ipsos Malaysia. And we'll end the session today with our speaker, Paki Charan Chanaporn, who is the Chief Client Officer for Ipsos Malaysia. So yes, that was a very quick, brief introduction from me. I am Ahmad Sufyan, the Marketing Manager for Malaysia, and now I would pass it over to Ajay to kick off the session today. Over to you, Ajay.
Thank you so much, Sufyan. So over the next couple of minutes, I'd like to share with you what we at Ipsos believe about artificial intelligence, our point of view. We will talk to you then about synthetic data and how you could use it in various use cases. My colleague Paki will talk about that. And then Jane will talk about an actual application of it in the area of innovation and insight. Sufyan, if you can advance to the next slide, please. So if we take a look at AI, it's ubiquitous at this point in time. It features in every casual conversation at the water cooler, as well as at the discussions. It's pretty much a driving force that has been with us and is powering your Netflix recommendations, your smartphones, your navigation app, as well as your digital assistant. We at Ipsos fully want to integrate the applications of AI in our operations, recognizing its potential to enhance efficiency, spark innovation, as well as scale our efforts. A lot of our point of views are experimentations in multiple domains of market research have been documented in our thought pieces, the papers that we've published, and we'd be very happy to share them with you. These range for the applications of AI in advertising research, product testing, developing persona bots that you can use to engage with your data, and also foster ideation. Not just that, our successes at the recent SOMAR, where we had the privilege of sharing 6 papers, which is a record for any single company, was a immense honor. It also allowed us to win the best paper as well as the best qualitative paper, a achievement that has been fairly rare. No surprise, these papers also talked about our experimentation with generative AI. We've embraced it in pretty much everything that we do. But as you already know, AI is not free from flaws. It could have a set of inaccuracies, which could allow you to take erroneous calls. There could be bias in the training data itself because most large language models are often trained with data from countries that are Western, educated, democratic, developed. And what tends to happen is that it espouses values that are often unique to the West. There's also a possibility of mediocrity creeping in because AI is and large language models are often probabilistic in nature. What they often tend to do is report on the central tendency. This has a possibility of vanillizing insight. There could also be issues of inadequacy of data. Now, given all of these aspects in mind, our aim has always been to try to blend HI, human intelligence, and AI together to propel innovation forward, and so that we can bring these customer centric, human centric insights to the foray. Sufyan, if you can please move to the next page, please. What this allows us to do is leverage human intelligence for imagination, curiosity, creativity itself. And where AI comes to the fore is bring about greater efficiency, inspiration, and scale. Blending these two methodologies results in much richer perspectives, truer perspectives, perspectives that would help you to build brands that are truly meaningful. Across our 20,000 Ipsos teams, we've had the opportunity to share our platform called Ipsos Facto. This is something that you'll see on the next slide. Ipsos Facto is a investment that we've made in democratizing the use of AI to our own teams. This is a platform that is secure. It does not allow model training or data sharing. So all data that is processed on Ipsos Facto remains fairly secure. What this allows us to do is give the power of innovating to each of our teams across the world. We leverage it for various purposes, such as coding, translation, reporting, as well as use its capability to develop new methodologies that allow us to do things that we have not been able to do in the past. This is a model agnostic framework where we then are able to leverage the latest models from Google, OpenAI, Anthropic, Minstrel to make sense of the research challenges that exist and deliver to our clients with great speed, thereby cutting down cycle time. On the next slide, you'll see a couple of applications that our teams use Ipsos Facto for, such as translating documents, transcription of data, converting and extracting meaning from images and videos. Imagine a scenario where you can take a look at how an individual is using your particular product and draw implications from that, not from a small sample, but from a huge sample itself. And that's what Vision AI does. Or a scenario where you could use AI as your brainstorming buddy, your sparring partner to come up with products and ideas which are unique to the market that leverage their need gaps, but come up with new and interesting and innovative solutions. Through this process, we are guided by a robust evaluation framework, a framework that we refer to as the three T's, that of trust, transparency, and truth. And in each of these, we ask ourselves questions such as, is this truly delivering accuracy? Is this free from hallucinations or false positives? Is this truly explainable? Are we stuck behind a black box? And if that is the case, we need to find mechanisms to uncover transferability in the data. And most importantly, can this be trusted? Is this ethically collected, fair, secure, which is what our clients are very cautious about? Do we respect the respondents' privacy whilst we are working with their data using large language models? We've also, given our obsession with accuracy, partnered with multiple academic institutions as we go about the process of investigating the applications, shortcomings, and use cases for AI in the world of market research. Universities such as MIT, Stanford, University of Chicago, and so we're very much on the cutting edge of co-developing solutions that bring together the latest learnings from the academic world, from technology, as well as our expertise in research. Perhaps that's why we've been awarded the most innovative company by the Grit Report for the last 5 years in a row. Now, our clients are asking us several questions around AI itself. For example, what exactly is synthetic data? How can I use this? How can I improve the quality of my data? What tools should I be using? And we feel we are best suited to answer these questions because we operate in a manner which is fairly agnostic with regards to the specific large language model that we use, or the fact that we ensure both HI and AI to train the and extract meaning from the data. Next slide, please. Or the fact that we can use statistically validated methods that are grounded in years and years of research that we've been doing to ensure that our clients get the very best. Our expertise in asking questions and solving problems has been leveraged in our framework for prompt development. And the fact that we have multiple advisors to help us go through the process of ensuring that we're giving the very best to our clients. Now, with the use of AI, we've been able to develop a host of new solutions, and we'd be happy to share them with you in various addressing various business questions, such as knowledge curation and management using AI to make sense of the existing data that you already have, or Explorer, which is a wonderful platform that helps you to uncover incremental innovation solutions based on addressing customer needs and pain points, or the fact that you could use AI to ideate, to think about various different use cases and applications, or use it in the context of evaluating your communication itself. But that's not the topic for today. Our topic for today is trying to understand what synthetic data is all about. Bucky, would you like to tell us more about that?
Sure. Thank you very much, Ajay, and thank you all the guests for joining us for today. So let's go into, I think the topic that you're all waiting for is what we are talk about, which is the synthetic data. So in the next one, we would see that for the synthetic data, let's first clarify about what is a synthetic data. You might hear it here and there. but I think that it's quite simple, right? As the name says, synthetic data is artificially created, right? So it's not something that you collect from the actual events. However, these data supposed to have a statistical property and patterns that reflect the real world data. So that is the synthetic data we're talking about, right? On the next one, you will see that on this one, just a moment, there's a bit of lagging. Right. So you know why this is such a big thing in the market research, right? Because these gonna be the 4 key benefits that the synthetic data gonna bring in when we do the research. The first one is it's gonna give you a faster data collection, right? We now know that collecting a data from the survey it used to take maybe 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks. With this one, it can collect data in days, probably in hours, right? And with that, of course, the second one that follow is the cost effectiveness. We know that, we all you of you probably have been challenged and how can we, still get the insight while making using the less cost. That is also the benefits of synthetic data. Flexibility, right? So if you are familiar with the like questionnaire survey, right, you would always find that if you let's say you launch a survey, but then you kind of missing a certain question, then either you call everything back or you need to redo everything again. With synthetic data, it allows you to have those interactive flexibility. The last one is on the optimization, right? Where sometimes you test the things in one scenario, then you ask, but what gonna happen if I do in the second and third and fourth scenario? And that is the benefits of using a synthetic data. So on the next one, you would see that as Ajay mentioned before, that there are of course a great potential come also with a certain risk. And I think the risk that Ajay mentioned is similar to here. I just gonna drill down it a little more. So the first one is of course inaccuracy. As the name mentioned, is synthetic data, it's not the real data. So of course there always been a risk that data is not accurate. The second one is on the bias, right? Let's say that you are collecting a data from a male group of respondents, but you kind of use it for everyone. So it's not representative because it has some bias in the data because the data only come from, let's say, a male respondent, right? So that is the bias. The third one, mediocrity, again, as Ajay mentioned, one of the things that AI do is that they seem to want to take like the middle ground. Okay, you're supposed to be here. So, but then in the world of research, of course, we are looking for that spark of insight. We are looking for that, a new answer, that something new which might be hidden somewhere. So, there might be a flaw of synthetic data on that. And of course, the last one is inadequacy, right? Because the synthetic that's created for one purpose might not be good for another purpose. For example, you are collecting data on synthetic on maybe human motivation and attitudes. Then you go and ask them, okay, but what does the people gonna do about shopping, right? So of course, it's a different set of data, different purpose. So it might not be adequate in all scenarios. So again, but that's why you still have to have a human in the loop. As RJ mentioned before, we are strongly believe in having human in the loop, human intelligence, the HI, if we are working together with AI. So everything that we do, all the solution that we created, including the synthetic data, is of course the work with the HI combined with the AI. And when Ajay mentioned about our partnership with the esteemed university, one of the case that we have is this partnership that we have with Stanford University. And this is something that we directly working on the synthetic data. So this is a joint research program between Ipsos and Stanford. So what we do is that we working together with Stanford first to generate a synthetic data. That's the first one. Then we also have the response from the real data. And then we see whether how accurate the synthetic data coming in, what is the percentage, what is the correlation. versus the of AI respondent versus the real respondent. So then why does Ipsos is in the best position to talk to you about synthetic data? Because of these four elements. Of course, AI is based on technology. And for Ipsos, this has been something that we invest on the first day, right? So we invested on the first day. We know that the tech is very important. So that is almost like a structure that we need to have. The second one is on data asset. What I mean is that AI is relying on what data you can use it to train the AI, right? And Ipsos sitting on the most, maybe one of the most first party data that anyone can have. So we have that asset to train the AI model. We also have the third one, which is our AI expertise. We have our own data scientists who are working on AI. And the fourth one, which is going to be very important if you are a market research agency, is we need to have a research expertise, because at the end, you need to know how to ask the question. So I think that for right now, let's go into a bit more detail of the synthetic data. And we know that it's artificially generated, but how do we use that? We use it in two big ways, on the left side, on the right-hand side. The left side is the data augmentation, right? And on the right-hand side is when we use the synthetic data itself and try to get information or insights out of the synthetic respondents. So we're going to show you all the four use cases of synthetic data. Okay. On the next one, okay, the first one is we call data boosting, right? So for the data boosting is to use a synthetic data to creating more data, from what we originally have. So let's say you got a first set of data, but then you feel that, oh, this set of data is not enough and I want more data, right? So when do we use this kind of scenario? So let's look at this scenario, right? You do a study with a healthcare professional, with doctors, and not just any doctors. These are doctors who specialize in cancer treatment, right? So you can imagine that only a few handful of specialists in the world are in this area. And if you are doing an interview or study with them, first, it's going to be costly. They're going to be very hard to find. And when you have, it's going to be something with like a small sample. But with the synthetic data, after we collect the first set of data from the real doctor, the real respondent, we can use a synthetic data to create another set of data complementing one, where can we have generating more sample. And you can see that from the blue bar and the red bar, the synthetic result is come up very similar to the result getting from the real doctors. On the second one is on the data imputation, right? So we are using a synthetic data to filling in a missing information, right? And probably this is something that research industry has been using for a long time. And that's why we say that, using a synthetic data is not new to us, right? So of course, you are there when you collect the data, there are always some case where, these respondents are missing this data, respondents are missing this data, can be from multiple reasons. We can use a synthetic data to fill in that. So we remove the case of the missing data. Another thing is that from the research, we can also use it to improve the survey's experience, right? So in this example, what happened in this study is that, we asked the respondent to respond to a 47 attribute survey, like a 5-point scale. What do you agree or disagree with this one? And you can imagine how tedious and maybe even boring of this task it can be, right? So now, instead of have to ask everyone 47 attributes, we only have maybe half or maybe 60% of the attribute. Then we use the synthetic data to fill in the other missing data. What we have is that, we can still getting the data that is very correlated with the real data. And of course, the survey dropout rate is much, much lower when we're using this method. So that is when, we're using the data and kind of complementing with the data which we already have. So the second big scenario is when we use a pure synthetic data and for a certain purpose. The first one is we call an AI agent or persona bot, right? So in this one, imagine that you are doing a segmentation study, or you can use your own data internally to create your own segment, right? Let's say you collect data about, let's say, their usage and attitude, their behavior on certain things, but you also think about, hey, but if I test my new concept or new product with this group of people, what will they say? Instead of need to go out to the real people and running the study, finding segment, running them with this group of people, you can have a conversation with the synthetic respondent or synthetic persona, which we call a persona bots. And then in the last one I talked about is using pure, fully synthetic data, right? So what is this mean? This means that you collect information from a real people. Let's say you collect my information like Paki, a male, 40 years old, professional, right? And then you ask me about, let's say, a lot of things about, let's say, my behavior, my attitude, my shopping, etc., etc. Then you create like a copy of me, like a Paki clone, like Paki synthetic, right? And then when you do this large enough, let's say you create, let's say 100,000 synthetic respondent, then when you do a study, you don't need to go to a real people anymore. You go to this synthetic panel. Then, they can give you the result, right? So this one is the one that Ipsos are not going into yet. We feel that this is very far. There is still need a lot of research, a lot of R&D before we fully embrace this one. But this can be something that happen in the future, right? So right now, let's go to my colleague Jane, going to talk exactly about how you synthetic data in the innovation.
Thanks, Paki. And so thank you, everyone. Let's take a lot of this theory and talk about it in reality. So obviously, we do a lot of R&D at Ipsos, and we've done a lot of use case work on synthetic data. And I want to share some of the results from that use case and that R&D with you. So at Ipsos, we fundamentally believe that synthetic data is really going to revolutionize the way that we do product testing. And so that's where we have done a lot of R&D and also a lot of actual live tests using synthetic data, HI plus AI. But first, I just want to reiterate to everybody that when we're talking about enhancing and augmenting data with synthetic data, we are not talking about copying. We're not directly copying. So we're not going to say, here we go, here's 50 people, real data, let's duplicate that, and suddenly we have 100. What we are doing is we are imitating that 50 group of people and to create a much bigger sample size. So in the next slide. Sufyan? Okay, so we've done this experiment. We did 2 waves. We go to the next slide. We're going to start talking about the first wave, which is excluding synthetic data, where what we really want to do is understand the minimum sample size that we can start off with. So Sufyan, if you skip forward 2 slides, please. Okay, and the next one. So as we all know, ultimately market research is all about taking smaller sample sizes and growing them, right? Making them to reflect a bigger audience and a bigger target sample. So we wanted to really put this to the test and see how low we can get. And so we started off with our product testing database. Our product testing database is massive. So any one of you that has done product testing with us in the past will know just how big it is and how much we use it around the world. It covers 84 markets. There's 184 different products and categories, and there's 40,000 consumers in there. So what we've done is we've taken a sample of some of these projects. We've taken 50 people out of some of these projects, right? So if you go to the next slide, Sufyan. We've taken a sample of 50 humans out of that data, out of those projects, to say, how does that match up to the bigger sample, the total sample? So are those 50 nationally representative people of that project, representing the total sample of that project as well. And what we find is that it's actually really highly correlated. You can see here there's an R-score of 0.8, which is really, really good. So then if you look at the next slide, we wanted to go really so much deeper than this and start looking at different types of projects and different types of products. So if you have, and what we found is that if you have products that are actually quite different, so they're scoring quite differently in product test, then actual R number goes so much higher. It goes to R 0.95, which is really, really, really strong. And of course, the nearer, the closer those products are to each other, slightly lower the correlation, but it still gets down to a 0.8, which is a very strong correlation. So on the next slide, but we all know that having just 50 people has some real limitations, right? Statistical significance, statistical strength becomes less prominent. There's also a lack of diagnostics and a lack of diversity. We can't break down sample size of 50 to look at subgroups. To look at male versus female, for example, it becomes 25. It's too small to look at. So then that's where we wanted to explore on the next slide, this whole idea of augmenting that 50 with some synthetic data. So the way we did that, sorry, Sufyan, is we have 200 humans. So again, using our product testing database, we have our 200 human sample. We take our seed sample of 50, and then we synthesized 150 extras so that you end up with the same 200 data points. So if you go to the next slide, what I just want to make sure everyone is clear is that we're not comparing our augmented sample with our seed sample. On the next slide, what we're actually looking at is the augmented sample versus the original full human sample. Do these two groups, 200 humans or 50 humans plus 150 synths, get the same answers and the same results? If you look at the next slide, you'll be excited to know that of course it does, because otherwise I wouldn't be here talking to you about it. So what we are seeing when we run this data is that there are really strong relationships between the all-human sample and the human plus synth sample. So the top row here, you've got 6 different products that we've tested. This is obviously summarized data. So we've got 6 different products that we've tested. The all-human data has the lead product as E, that gets the first position, 73%. And when you look at the human plus synth, E is still the top product at 70%. So the data is mirroring and matching. And if you look across the different products, you'll see very similar scores, 58, 58, 67, 66. There are, of course, some fluctuations. B and F have switched places in terms of the ranking, from second to third or third to second. But the actual percentages are not significant. They're quite similar anyway. So it doesn't have a huge impact on how we're going to read the data and make a business decision on those products. But the biggest benefit comes when we start looking at subgroups. Because we're looking at synthetic, we can synthesize data for specific subgroups. So we can have 50 plus 150 synths of buyers and 50 plus 150 buyers, rather than taking our human sample and splitting it 50-50. So once again, you can see the relative positions of the products are the same, but because we have that bigger sample size in the human synth sample, we get more significant differences, more obvious and targetable differences that we can look at in the data. So on the next slide. So the R&D that we have done shows really strongly that you can synthesize human data, not mirror, not copy, not duplicate, but imitate that data. It's really strong, and there's a strong business case for helping us to drive action standards and the business decisions. The core outputs are still very strong, and so we can be confident in what we're making our decisions on and what we do with the business. Product rankings, significant differences. We've seen how that works, and the product rankings are largely similar. The numbers are largely similar across the data as well. And we can see that the correlation between the small sort of synth sample and the human sample are very strong. There's strong correlation as well. So on the next slide. So just to add a little bit of confidence to our R&D, just wanted to confirm that we have done a lot of this work, either through our product testing database or through actual live projects. We have some clients already doing these live projects using synthetic data. And as you can see, we may not have done anything specifically in Malaysia. Please do reach out if you want to. But we have covered a large number of Southeast Asian markets. We've done work in Indonesia, Philippines, Thailand, and Vietnam. So we are confident that it works in the region as well. We've done a lot of categories and we've covered a lot of different designs. So next slide. So just to remember, our goal here is not to replace human feedback. Throughout any communication you see from Ipsos on AI, you will always see we partner and pair it with HI, human intelligence and artificial intelligence together. So on the next slide, just to recap, we think that synthetic data is really going to turbocharge product tests. It's going to supercharge our agility. We don't have to fully interview 200 people. We can interview 50 representative samples and synthesize the remaining sample. It can help us to unlock deeper insights because we can really build up those subgroups of interest using synthetic data, not having to go and find 150 mums with 3-month-old babies, for example. And we can also drive cost savings, not just in the actual research itself, but if we're talking product testing here, you guys need to actually produce the product and you don't need to produce as much. So there's cost saving on both sides of the equation as well. So if you want to know more, Ajay's already covered that we've done a lot of research in this space, and we have some specific papers on product testing with AI, which are all available on our ipsos.com, or if you want to, you can reach out to us. So the next slide, I think we're coming towards the end, and we'll address all the questions that I can see popping up. So thank you very much to Sufyan. As I say, I've seen a lot of questions popping up, so I'll hand the microphone over to him and he can address. I think some of them have been addressed already, but thank you very much everyone for your time.
Thank you, Jane, and thank you to all our wonderful Ipsos speakers on the sharing session today. So I see the chat box has been very lively. A lot of the questions coming in from our participants here today. So what we'll do is we will address some of the questions that have come in. I see that Paki and Ajay, thank you very much for addressing some of the questions we do have already in the chat box. So I think I will open it to the floor first and just see which of the questions we can pick up first, because there are some of the questions here that we have already answered to our clients. So I'll just bring it up here on the screen for us to be able to address some of the questions here a little bit better, right? So I'll bring up, the previous questions have been answered. So I'll bring up this question from Dr. Yong. I think he's been asking a few questions to the panelists, to the group here today already. So his question would be, can the synth data approach be used to derive revenue forecast? So is there anyone who would like to pick it up? I pass it to the floor. I pass it to the speakers to be able to pick up this question.
I will take it as nobody else has jumped in. So thanks, Paki and Ajay. So I think there's an element here of what risk we're ready to take and what size of decision you want to take. If you are making a very, very high risk decision with a product or with a service or anything, then we would recommend probably skewing higher towards the human insights and the human data collection rather than the artificial. If it's a medium to low risk in attempt or option, then I think we would suggest you can do more 50-50. Can it be used to derive a revenue forecast? Absolutely. If we've asked the right data for the 50 human sample or the human sample that we introduce, we can absolutely use that data to create those synths which will mimic and imitate the responses. So we can use it for revenue forecast, but I will caveat it that if you are looking at making a very high risk decision where the revenue is a particularly big part of it, then we might want to skew the data more towards the human.
Great, thanks, Jane. So I'll just bring up a few more questions since we have a little bit more time. I'll bring up a question from Sukwa. So Sukwa's question would be, what is the difference between copying and imitating? So if there's
Sure.
anyone,
Let me take on
okay, Paki, yeah.
this one, right? So for thankful is a great question, and I think that many people have the same idea. Okay, what is the difference? Is it? Imagine this. Think through with me. If you are having the data in the raw format, let's say in Excel file, right? Let's say in row A, this is the data. Copying is like you click copy and paste from row 1 to row 2, right? So that's a copying. It would be exactly the same because you just copy from row 1 to row 2. Imitating is when we create a row 2 by generating a synthetic data, and we also recheck that those data is not a simply copying, but it's purely generated, right? So what we check in this one is what we call a reoccurrence rate, right? So when we look at work with synthetic data, we are checking that we have zero reoccurrence rate. There is nothing in synthetic that we just copy from row 1 to row 2. It's purely generated.
Great, thanks, Paki. So I think we'll take about 2 or 3 more questions because we're going to try to end on time. So I'll take this question coming from Joel. So Joel's question would be in regards to the Malaysian market, where we have a diverse cultures and races. Normally we have subgroup quota by ethnicity, income, and region. So how does this new synthetic data change this? And do we no longer need this subgroup quota? Would anyone maybe want to pick this up?
Actually, it's a really interesting question because one of the big questions would be the fact that we never really look at total sample in Malaysia, right? We always look at, especially when it comes to product testing or sort of the consumer understanding work, actually across all research, we always look at it by ethnicity, and we see quite different behaviors beside ethnicity. So it's an interesting angle, actually, that we need to think of when we start doing work with synthetics in Malaysia, because do we want our 50 human seeds, our human sample? It would have to be reflective of the population. So we would have to make sure that we've included the Malay, the Chinese, the Indians, if we want to include all 3 groups. We would have to make sure, like in any other market, that you would have that sample of different incomes that you're targeting. You know, you don't have to have nationwide rep. If you are looking at targeting middle income, then we would need to make sure that we recruit that sample of middle income people. So your seed sample needs to reflect who it is that you want to target at the end of the day. We can't just have an entire sort of human sample of Chinese people if we actually want to take our entire product range to all of Malaysia, for example. But it's actually a really interesting question. I would take actually and bring up with our experts on this, because the whole Chinese Malay, the role of the ethnicities may mean that we need to do slightly more in the seed sample and slightly more human interaction to make sure that we can grow that, because we start off with very low subgroups on those groups with 50. So thank you for raising it as a question. Let me take it back and raise it as an interesting question to our R&D and analytics teams as well.
Okay, thank you, Jane. I think we have time for just one last question, because I think we are about coming to the end of time. So one last question coming from DJ in terms of how have we done
Okay, let me take
comparisons
it. I
using
think it's
machine
a
learning?
follow-up question to Fian, right? Because
Okay, cool.
DJ,
All right. So let's pick it up.
talked
Yeah.
about because DJ talked about the using the data to filling in the missing information, right? And actually, before we have synthetic data, there already an approach where we filling in missing data using a certain approach. She asked whether it's different with synthetic. I thought that, okay, we are using a different technique like machine learning to do that. So we asked follow-up question like whether using the machine learning data imputation is going to be different from the other method. Again, DJ, sorry, but I cannot answer that at the moment. We haven't done an R&D and in that level but it is a very interesting R&D question, like, comparing filling in missing data with one method versus the other method. And if we should compare that with the real data as well about what it should be, it's an interesting question, but sorry, we don't have the answer exactly at the moment.
Okay. Thank you, Paki. All right. I think we just have time for maybe just one last question since we're getting a lot of questions coming in from the crowd. I think we can just allocate just a little bit of time for one last question. A follow-up question from Sukhwa, actually, Jane, if you would like to pick this up. So
Yes,
does the
right.
core sample then also need to have a minimum base so it can be synced? Go ahead.
The R&D that we've done has put the minimum at 50. And I think for a category like yours, Sukhwa, a minimum of 50 would probably be sufficient because you don't have too much diversity within that group, right? But when we've worked with other clients talking about product testing and they're doing live projects using synthetic data, we tend to approach it with a tiered approach. And so one of our core clients that we're working with on using this method has set their own internal quotas to say if it's ranked as a low risk innovation and a low risk product, then they will do 50 human and 150 synths. If it's rated as a medium risk, they'll do 100. And if it's high risk, they do fully human fully human samples, sorry. So it's very much a conversation and a call that we would want to take. Our R&D says 50 is a good starting point for the human innovation and the human sample. So I would recommend, if we want to explore doing this with you, with any of our clients on the call, let's have a conversation about what the innovation would be, what the product or the risk level and so on is, the different target samples, and then call in our advanced analytics teams, who would be the one creating the synths in the first place, to really make sure that we've captured the nuance for each individual test, because, well, you all know, no product, no test, no sample is the same. I hope that answers your question, Sukhwa. You're on mute, Sufyan.
Thanks, Jane, for that reminder. So thank you again, everyone, for joining us for our session today. We look forward very much to hosting other webinars, other sessions, other forums with our clients very soon. So keep a lookout for the communications coming out from the Ipsos team. With that, we will end the session today. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Paki, Ajay, and Jane for the great session today. We hope all of our guests here today found the session very beneficial and insightful to you. Not to worry, we will be sending you an email after the session ends to share with you the recording and a copy of the deck that's been shared here today. So thanking you all again. We hope to see you again soon. Take care. Have a great day. Have a great week ahead. And yeah, we will be in touch again for the next session coming out soon from Ipsos. Thank you so much. See you all soon.